the camera not popping up? I have no idea what's going on. Sorry, hold on. I don't know why my camera's not popping up. Hello, camera. Did you turn off? This is a first. So sorry. Give me just a second. I don't know what is happening. Why are you doing this, camera? There we are. Hello. It was working beforehand. Hello, Miss Pearl wants to come and say hello. Hi. Yes, I know. Mommy sounded very distraught. I know. I'm okay. I gotta teach the knitters. We're gonna learn how to crochet some more today. All right. Gotta go. Go lay down. Hi, everybody. How are you doing? It is just me today for BiCrafty Bootcamp. Hopefully we are able to get through everything we need to go through today together and have an enjoyable time. Give me here just a second. I got to pull up the chats. That way I'm able to see it with you guys. But as I'm doing that, why don't you let me know where you're joining us from? Because I love to see that. I love to see where you guys are all coming in from. And it's just a lot of fun. So let me pull up this chat. It's going to be here in just a second. You know, you would think that 6 minutes prep time, that's not just for you, that's for me too. You would think it'd be enough. It's just not. There's so much stuff that has to be done on my end to make sure that it all happens appropriately, you know, that everything comes through okay. And it's just really tricky to make sure it's all done. Oh, good. I see so many of you are in here. Hello, guys. So hi to Caitlin and Angela, and Julia's here. Hi, Julia, and Emily, Yolanda, Shelly, Kristen, Carol, Sidra, Sharon, Pat, Stacy. Oh my gosh, so many of you. Hi guys, I'm so happy you're here. Just so you know, I do have a giveaway that I will be doing today live on air from We Crochet. So you do want to stay tuned for the entire show. At the very end, I shouldn't say show. I'm so used to the podcast, you know, from doing it for so many years. So stay tuned for the entire lesson. At the very end, we're going to give away something very special from We Crochet. It's a beginner crochet kit. So it's an entire kit is what we're going to give away. Let me go ahead, and while we're in the chat, I'll put a link so you know what you will be staying tuned for. So I put a link to that so you can check it out if you want. But we will be doing a live giveaway today. If you guys don't know already, I have updated Lesson 5's instruction plan to include the pattern for the bandana style triangle shawl with shells. And that is what we're going to take a look at as we go through today's lesson. So why don't you take a minute, pull that up if you want. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So that way I can reference it and do all those good things with you guys also. So give me just 1 second here. Maybe we'll see here if this will let me do it. Oh my gosh, you guys, you would think it's a Monday for how slow things are going around here. It's just pretty nuts, pretty darn nuts. Let's see here. Window. I'd like a window. Oh man, I tried to see if like Robin Chichula wanted to join me on here, and she was like, I've got all this stuff to do. I can't do it today. And I'm just like, okay, I guess I'm going to be doing it all by my lonesome today, which is always a little bit tricky because usually I could have somebody else, you know, talking and doing stuff as I'm doing this stuff behind the scenes, but it's just not going to happen. All right. So I do have my lesson 5 up. Can you believe it, guys? We are 5 lessons in, 5, it looks like 10. We're 5 lessons in. How many of you completed the extra credit last week? Just curious how many of you completed that extra credit. I know that in the Marley's Minions group, we saw a lot of people who were working on theirs. How cool is it as knitters? Most of you are knitters. How cool is it that you were able to complete a baby blanket probably in like 2, 3, 4 days? Like, because we all know that does not happen in knitting unless you are knitting nonstop. Like it just does not happen. But to be able to do it for crochet, that's pretty darn cool, right? Like it's one of those, it's just a really neat thing to be able to do. I know that it's something that I really look forward to whenever I'm making a crocheted item or a blanket of some sort, because it just goes by so very quickly. I'm opening up. A lot of you are saying that you enjoyed the blankets, and yes, Julia, Mercury is in retrograde. I know. Brenda says, I've refreshed the browser and I can't see the lesson notes on the page. They are there. all the pattern is there. You might have to clear your cache if it's not there. I just clicked update again. Everything should be there. Everything should be there. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see all of the patterns. Everything's there. Like I'm looking at behind the scenes, I'm looking on the scenes. It's all there. Everything is there. You should be able to find everything you need. So here we go. Caitlin says, I'm making a really big one, so I'm only 20 inches in or so. You know what? That's all right, because that's one of the cool things about this particular blanket, right? Is you let the yarn do all the color changing for you, and you just sit there and crochet back and forth, and it's pretty easy. Now, we did use the stacked double crochets with that lesson, which is kind of interesting because I jumped the gun on my own self with the whole lessons because I planned on doing that as part of this lesson with the edging. So we are going to talk a little bit about stacked single or stacked stitches. And then we'll talk about standing stitches and slip stitches as far as how to join yarn, because it's, a little bit different than knitting when you have to join your yarn to get started and then compensate for the height of the stitches. So we're going to talk a little bit about that with the edging. And then I'm also going to reference some charts, some stitch charts that we'll take a look at together here on the screen. I did not put them in the actual lesson themselves yet because I plan on putting together an ebook, so to speak, of several different edgings that you guys will be able to purchase if you want to have some quick, easy, beginner-friendly edgings that are going to be available to you to add to a bunch of different things. Also, last but not least, today, I do want to talk a little bit about how to add edging, the crochet edging, to your knitting. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And the reason we're joining that in with this as just a brief little part of it is because this is crochet lesson for knitters. So why not show you how you can really create BiCrafty projects where you combine both items? All right, so there's a lot to get through today. So let's go ahead and jump in with that. So nice to see a lot of you here. And Devora says that she's very excited to be here and that she is doing her blanket 45 inches wide, and she's about halfway done. So that's really great. I love these blankets. I think they're awesome. Chrissy actually made the sample for me and it turned out really good. So just once again, quick reminder, we are going to be doing a giveaway today with the BiCrafty Bootcamp. We will be giving away the beginner crochet kit from WeCrochet. And if you guys don't know already, we partnered up with WeCrochet for this entire BiCrafty Bootcamp. You'll notice that we have really tried hard to use all of the WeCrochet yarns for a lot of our projects. Obviously, the extra credit project was using the Red Heart Super Saver Ombre because I like the way those colors faded together. But for the most part, we're using all WeCrochet and Knit Picks yarn. And if you guys are watching this live or sometime within this week, remember there is a sale going on over at Knit Picks because Saturday is I Love Yarn Day. So they are helping celebrate that by offering you a discount on yarn. So if you have not yet purchased yarn for the upcoming blanket we will be creating with motifs, don't worry, there's going to be options for you if you don't want to make a blanket with these granny motifs, but hopefully you're going to love it as much as I do. I think it's really cute. But if you haven't got yarn for the blanket, or maybe you haven't bought the chroma yet for this piece, or maybe you want to try out some of the other yarns and give those a whirl, it is a good time. I would like to encourage you to use my affiliate link if you don't mind. It does not cost you anything extra, but I do make a little bit of money on the back end directly from WeCrochet when you purchase through my affiliate link and purchase from them. So it's a win-win. And that link is already in all of the links that we put in all the blogs and stuff. All of those are affiliate links. So if you just click that and go to the website, whatever you buy there, I make a little bit of money on it. It's a great way to support your free BiCrafty Bootcamp content. So that is happening. Okay, let me turn on my camera to my phone and we're going to kind of jump in. I've got to pull up my notes. Do I want to turn my camera yet? I'm wondering if I just should do a share screen to begin with and talk about the notes. I think that's what I'm going to do first. Okay, guys, so I'm going to do a share screen and we're going to talk about this. All right, so here we are. I got to scroll up to the top. I was all the way scrolled to the bottom, checking to make sure everything was there. As you guys know, you can always go to marleybird.com to find the latest lessons. If you just go to the blog, and typically if you just click blog, it'll take you to the newest lesson. I think Catherine has already updated this on the main page for the BiCrafty Bootcamp. You should be able to find it there, but when in doubt, always just click on blog, or you can always search the website. Just type in BiCrafty Bootcamp lesson 5. You might get lesson 5 for the knitters and the crocheters. You just select which one you want there. Okay. All right. So obviously, welcome to BiCrafty Bootcamp. There's a link to the crochet blanket if you missed it. If you are not part of the BiCrafty Bootcamp newsletter, but you're joining here for all the fun, make sure you join that newsletter, because Chrissy sends out that newsletter specific to BiCrafty Bootcampers. So if there are any notes, any special coupon codes, or any special tweaks to a pattern, or any special anything that is dedicated to BiCrafty Bootcamp, you do want to be a part of that. All right, guys. So this newsletter, this here, is completely separate from anything else I do. It is geared directly to the BiCrafty Bootcampers. All right. All right. So skill building, granny stitch and shell stitch. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, Marley, didn't we already learn that? Well, the answer is yes. And so why not take something we've already learned and capitalize on it and show how that can be used in other ways to learn other things, just very much like you would do when you learn stockinette stitch. You still use stockinette stitch when you learn how to do cables, how to do increases and decreases and all that stuff, right? We're not using other stitches. So we're going to stick with these stitches since we've practiced with them to learn more, to extend our skills. All right. So we're going to use these stitches, and we're going to use them in such a way that we're going to connect the increasing idea of adding increases to create shaping on something. And we're going to also learn about edging or borders on something. Now, come on, where is my stop share screen? Here we are. Okay. So as knitters, we understand the whole idea of edging and borders, right? For the most part, we get the fact that adding an edging or a border to something just gives it that little something extra. You know, you can make a rolled brim hat, which is just that, it's a rolled brim, but maybe you want a 1x1 brim, which is an edging, which is a border. You could have garter stitch as a border. You could have lace as a border. You can add an I-cord as a border, attached or unattached. You guys all know I love an attached I-cord. All of these are little extras that really take your piece to that little bit of a next level. The same thing is true when it comes to crochet. You can do a basic stitch pattern. Prime example of that would be our crocheted blanket from the extra credit, right? I made that so that there is no border or no edging needed. If you just wanted a very simple, straightforward blanket, that is what you get. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly beautiful. Everything's great with it, right? But if you wanted to step it up a little bit more, you could go through it and add like a pom-pom border or a shell border or a reverse single crochet border, or, you know, any sky's the limit. You could add more to it. Not that you have to, but you could. So when we talk about crochet, a lot of times people want to add crochet edging or borders to stuff because it makes it that just little bit of finish. And honestly, you guys, I learned this the most from my friend Robin Chichula through the years. If you don't know this already, maybe you should. Robin, even before we worked together, you guys, I have been a huge fan of Robin's. Like I would go on to say I'm one of her #1 fans, and she is my favorite crochet designer, bar none. And you know, that is a big statement considering how many crochet designers I know in my career, in my life, that are my friends. But out of all of them, Robin is my absolute favorite. It's something about the way she approaches her design, she puts things together, and the aesthetic of her look that she does. And a lot of the times, y'all, it's because of the edging or the border she chooses to use that takes her design from being just really basic to something extra special. So honestly, I learned the importance of edging and borders from Robin. And then I learned the how-to and how to really customize and understand how those can be added to a project from my friend Edie Ekman, who happened to write several books on edgings and borders that I absolutely love. You guys will see those in the lesson that I've linked to them, like an Amazon link. It is an affiliate link. But guys, I even mentioned it in the lesson. When it comes time to start building your crochet library, all of Edie Ekman's books, when it comes to the edging books and the motif books, those are must-haves. They are like as important to you as a crocheter as like Elizabeth Zimmerman books are, or any sort of a Stitch dictionary book. Like there are so Clara Parks books. Those books are a must-have, in my opinion, for a knitter's library. These books from Edie are a must-have in a crocheter's library. You will not be disappointed, whether you get the actual physical book or you get the Kindle version. I have both. I have multiple copies of the actual physical books, and I have the Kindle version also, so that way I have it on hand all the time. But it was from Edie's books that I learned how to read borders and edgings, right? How to understand the concept of the stitch repeat and going around the corners. I understood, the importance of I'm going to call it the base. I think she even calls it the base. And I wrote that in the lesson also, of if you aren't really sure how you want to add something, start off with a single crochet base around the whole thing to give you something to work off of, to make things evened out, to make it really look nice. So anyways, those are the things there. So going into this lesson, knowing that we're going to be talking about edgings, you more often than not know a lot already as a knitter how important edgings are. It's just going to be a matter of taking the knowledge of how important they are, applying it to crochet to understand how the stitch multiples work for crochet, because especially if you're going in the round, which we aren't going to talk about this week, we'll talk about that next week, but as you increase out, like stitches might become bigger and you might have to take up more room and space. So where knitting, everything is very much on a grid, we have to also compensate for the height of the stitches in crochet, which can be a little bit tricky, which is where crochet stitch patterns that are already written for us are very handy, but creating your own can be a little bit tricky down the road. Everybody with me so far? All right, so hold on. I'm going to go see how you're doing, because that was a lot of talking. I didn't get a chance to look. Wendy Seals says, I once crocheted edgings on a sundress I knitted for my daughter. It is a beautiful edging. Crochet edgings are great, you guys. And they could be, you could do something very basic for knitting and then just have a very dramatic shawl collar piece that's in crochet. Like there's so many options. The Lone Wanderer's Bunker says, working on the Finagle the Angle scarf, and I am not scared of it now. That's good. I'm not scared of it. That's part of the Joanne Stitch Along that's going on. Renee Williams says it's a small world. I don't know who she's talking to about that, but that's all right. And Julia, I've been looking at all of the extra credit projects on the Facebook page, and they are all awesome. You minions should be very proud of yourselves. And I'm so proud of them too. So yeah, it looks like you guys are doing great. Jasasu, I think my mom did crochet edgings for knitted scarves and they look awesome. They do. Guys, this is the biggest thing, right? For whatever reason, here in America, crocheters and knitters tend to not get along, right? I joke around. I say they're like the sharks and the jets, right? And they're just like, it's like they're snapping on the street, getting ready to attack each other. When really, we're just like cousins of one another. We relate to one another. And what one does, the other can really complement. So combining the two crafts together is really a beautiful thing. And it's something that's done a lot in European patterns. It's done in Asian patterns. I don't know if you would say Asian, like Japanese and Korean. And I haven't seen any Chinese patterns. I've seen them in Russian patterns. The combination of the two are very common, so much so that it is my understanding that in Japan, the word for knitting and crochet is the same word. It's one word. It's called amimono. So amimono in Japanese means knitting and crochet. They don't distinguish between the two. Isn't that interesting? So yeah, the two complement each other very well. So it's a good combination for sure. All right, let's go back here to the share screen, if I can find it. And oh, now it's hidden. It's hidden for me. Isn't that lovely? That's lovely. All right, so let me expand this up. You understand the importance of the granny shell stitch and the importance of edgings. And we put on here crochet edgings for beginners because we all still are beginners. And, when I was writing out this blog post, it was very tricky because I was like, how do I write this out? And I really kind of wanted it to be like a tip sheet. It's like, hey, let me talk to you about edgings, but let me give you these tips. So these are big things that you can kind of think of when we're talking about crochet. So let's take these as they come to us, right? So let's talk about edging specifically as it refers to crochet. It says working on edging is easier when you have a solid base of stitches to begin with. For that reason, you'll find a lot of patterns that have you begin with a row or a round of single crochets or double crochets or whatever it is that they want you to do. And they'll have you space them out evenly, both along the row edge and the long edge, all right, or the side edge. So the stitch edge or the row edge. Now, this is not absolutely necessary, and 100% you're going to see this, that I did not do that on the shawl for this week's pattern, but it is something that's very common. So let's talk about that one first, okay? Let me do the stop screen share, and then let me come over here to this and unmute this. Let me know if you guys can still hear me, if you don't mind, because I want to make sure you can hear me. All right. So let me pop this over. Give me a thumbs up, everybody. Give me a thumbs up. And speaking of, don't forget to smash that like button right now, so that way people know that you're enjoying this video. All right. So I think you guys are almost there. There's such a delay. It's crazy. All right. So I brought over some of my swatches here, and I am going to just take this off real quick so I can work into the side of these. Cool. Thank you, Julia. See how late that delay is so crazy long. So what I mean by that is, let's say you were working on one of these pieces. All right, let's just pick this one because we can. And let's just grab some yarn here. Oh, I have so much, you guys, I have so much yarn here. I can't even believe I can't just like grab a thing of yarn. It's the same color. I can't grab the same color. Hold on a second. Oh my goodness gracious. Talk amongst yourselves. Let me just grab some different yarn. All right, we're going to grab pink here. And what you would do is, if you were doing an edging on this piece, right? This is just plain old single crochet. This is with love yarn. And let's say I wanted to do an edging. Well, what I could do is, to begin with, typically before you start an edging, you would want to do a round of an like a single crochet or half double or something along those lines to essentially prep your work. And you would typically want to do it with the same color you're using. So that way you can make it look rather seamless as far as the transition from this to this. And you're going to see why here in just a second. So let's just pick this yarn. We're going to grab this hook. And this is also going to go in a little bit to part of the stuff we're going to learn. You can join with a slip stitch. All right, so let's join. This is the last row I did. Let's join with the slip stitch here. And my other camera keeps turning off on me. I'm not sure why. So we're going to join with the slip stitch. So I pull the yarn up, yarn over, pull through, and just give that a pull. That's joining with the slip stitch. Okay. So that's how you can join your yarn. And let's say we're going to do a round of single crochet. So we chain one. Why do we chain one? I know you guys all know this. It's because it's supposed to be the same height as our single crochet. And then you would do a single crochet into that first stitch. Now, because we're working along just the stitches on this row, if you are getting the same gauge, in theory, you should be able to just do one stitch for one stitch all the way through, right? And you'll notice I am going through both legs of the stitch, or both loops of the stitch, because we think of crochet, this is the front loop, that's the back loop. I'm going through both loops. That's another one of the tips that we're actually going to read. But when I insert my hook, I'm going underneath the front and the back, and I'm going through. Okay. I also have the right side of my fabric facing me. And I want you to notice here, like when we look at the right side, see how pretty those stitches are? And the wrong side, it's not that they're not pretty, but they definitely look different. Can you see that? Okay. So you want to make sure that you have the right side of your fabric facing you. Now, obviously, if a pattern tells you to do something different, you do that, but this is a general rule of thumb here, right? And you go down and you work along the edge of whatever you're working on, stitch for stitch. Now, obviously, this would change up if your stitches are a little bit more like up and down or crazy, but for the most part, this is what you're going to do. You're trying to get a nice, stable beginning, all right? And you would go all the way to the end. Now, this is going to be one of the other tips on there. When you're turning a corner here, not only do you have to count for this stitch on this stitch, you have to count for that row of that particular stitch and the corner. So when you're turning a corner, you want to place usually 3 stitches within that one stitch so that you can turn the corner. Okay. Those of you who are knitters and think of like triangle shawls, this is just like putting multiple stitches at the corner of your shawl, or if you're increased stitches so that way you have a nice curve on something. That's essentially what we're doing. We're making it so that way we're going this way. We're like, oh no, we gotta, turn. And now we're able to turn. And this time we're going to start working down our edge. Okay. Everybody with me so far? Okay. Now, when you're working down along the edge, and I'm not gonna waste time going back to the share screen because you can read through all of these notes and tips yourself. But as you're working along the edge here, typically a single crochet is about like a square, right? So typically you would do 1 single crochet for every one single crochet row. Sometimes 2 single crochets, like 1 single crochet for each single crochet row. But if these were double crochets, you'd want to maybe over the course of 2 double crochets, you might have 3 single crochets. All right. And that's fudgeable. Like you can change that up. It's very much like the ratio when you're picking up stitches and knitting, when you change up your ratio for that too. But for this, because these are single crochets, what I essentially do is I find the stitch itself of each row and I will single crochet around it. Now, this is where you have an option here, okay? Notice, oh, I'm sorry, my husband's trying to call me. Hold on, decline. And I'm coming back and I'm hold on. Let's tweak this here. Come on, there we go. All right, oh, and we're gonna dance. We're gonna do a little dance. And come on. Stay that way, baby, come on. Oh, it's not gonna play nice with me tonight. I love it when my phone calls, right? So great. All right, we're gonna see if this will stay here. All right, we're gonna try that. Okay, as we're working along the edge, like I said, you wanna find that stitch. But notice, guys, let me see if I can do this. Notice that stitch right there, that blue, is worked into where my gray pin is, okay? So my gray is literally, it's underneath those 2 loops. That's those 2 loops that stitch was worked into. Does that make sense? So ideally, you don't want to put your edging stitches into the big old hole you see there on the side, okay? Ideally, you don't want to put it into that hole that was already worked into with that stitch. Can you do it? Yes. If you need to do it, absolutely. But ideally, rule of thumb is to try to not go into those big holes that are created by, and they're only big because I'm making them big, but it's essentially, that's the stitch that was worked into with that stitch. Do you know what I mean? Hopefully that's making sense to everybody. So what you want to do is work around the post of these stitches, which you might think, well, the single crochet doesn't have a very big post, Marley. I know, and it just makes it real easy. You're just going to go around the post of the stitch and create a stitch, okay? Now, if you don't go around the post, one thing you could do, now this one's tricky, right? Because this is where it's underneath here. Because this is the end of this row. I like to actually go into the stitch. I treat it like it's the foundation chains. You see that? Did that make any sense? So like, for example, instead of going around this post here, I will sometimes pierce my hook right through the post itself and treat it very similar to a foundation. Like I'm going through a chain of a foundation chain, because I feel like it makes it a little less, like creates a hole. All right. Now, whichever one I choose to do, I keep it consistent. So let's see here. This one here, I went through the stitch. This one here, I'm going to go through the stitch again. So I'm just Like that's the post of my stitch. I'm literally just going to pierce through it. Very similar to like when we do stack stitches. And I'm going to do a single. I'm going to do it again over here. I want you to see the difference. And I'll do one more down here. Okay. You see how I don't really get big holes or anything there? And part of that's because as I'm piercing through, I'm leaving some, like I'm going to call it the butt of the stitch, essentially hanging out there to be able to cover up any sort of a hole. Whereas when I go through or go around an entire post, I get that little tiny bit of a hole, which you might not care about, but you might care about. It depends on what the design is, right? So in opposition to all of this, let's go around the actual post. So this is a stitch right here. I'm going to go around that entire post of the stitch. I'm going to go around the post of that stitch and around the post of that stitch and around the post of that stitch. And that's that one. And that's that one. Okay. Can you see the difference? These are going around posts of stitches. These are going through the posts of stitches and treating it like it's a chain. Does that make sense to everybody? Both of them work. You just decide what works best for you. As knitters, you guys understand, it's like picking up stitches, right? We all know that as you're going through and picking up stitches, you can decide if you go underneath that, like where you have all of that there, or if you go underneath the back and pick up. You just choose what you want to do and you keep it consistent. The same idea when you're doing edging here, okay? The other thing is as you're going through, you want to make sure that your edging is not rippling or getting too big or too tight on you. So this one still holds true where one single crochet for one single crochet stitch for one single crochet row works out really well, right? But let's say that for whatever reason, I didn't do my math correctly. And instead of doing it every row, maybe I start jumping around a little bit and I kind of go haphazard and I'm not really paying attention. And I'm just going, just putting my hook in there, whatever. I can automatically start to see, well, these are really pulling in on me, right? Because there's a lot of stretch there. I don't want that to happen. And at the same time, I don't want to put a lot of stitches into one space so it gets bigger. This is common knowledge stuff. You guys know how this works. But because it's crochet, we can easily just rip that out and get started, get back to where we want to be. Okay, you guys with me? Now, with crochet patterns, as well as knit patterns, usually they'll tell you to pick up, like if it was a knit pattern, they'll say pick up and knit X number of stitches evenly along the edge, right? So you have to then figure out, well, how often do I pick up how many stitches? The same thing can hold true with crochet. So just like in knitting, and this is what I'm referring to when I say to use stitch markers, guys, you can divide up your work with your stitch markers. So that way you know exactly how many stitches to work up in each section. So let's just pretend that we wanted to have a certain number of stitches on this larger piece here. And I am just like, I don't know how many rows I did, but I know I'm supposed to pick up like 20 stitches. I don't know. So instead of trying to get them as even as possible here and possibly getting to 20 stitches right here and still having all this space, you use stitch markers. And you guys have probably done this when you have planned out any sort of picking up stitches on a knit piece. It's the same idea, okay? Put your piece in half and put a marker at the halfway point. And then take both of those halves and put those in half. So put it at the halfway point, put your marker there. And this doesn't have to be an exact science. I mean, it's the beauty of crochet and knitting. It doesn't have to be an exact science. Use your markers for your placement. Now, instead of having a long row to work my edging or my border into, I have 4 mini quadrants. So if, for this example, if I needed to put 20 stitches along here, I know that I need to do, let's see, 5, 5, 5, and 5. All right, so I'd make sure I do 5 stitches here, 5 stitches here, 5 stitches here, 5 stitches here. And I also want to make sure that my first one is down here in this corner, And my second one is down here in this corner. You guys all get this, right? Like this is pretty common stuff. I'm gonna come over here and look at the chat real quick to see. It looks like you guys are all doing all right. Okay. Okay. It looks like you guys are following along with me. So, well, good. Let's see, Brenda. Oh, hold on, I gotta see what Brenda is saying. Is this down the side of your work? Correct? Yes, I'm talking purely right now about working down the edge of your work. Because I figured, you know, guys, for the most part, working along the top, right? The top of your work or the bottom of your work, it's pretty self-explanatory. So like the top of our work, like this is the top of my work. And working across the top, we're just working stitch for stitch. You do that all the time anyway. So you know how to do that. That would be like working into your bind off edge. This would be like working into your edge of your rows. All right, so this is your side edge. When you transition and you go to the bottom of your work, depending on how you work through your chains, you're going to have a remaining loop at the bottom of your work to go into. Okay, you see there? You know how I've been teaching you guys how to go into your chains and I put the back loop and the butt of the stitch, you know, on your needle, on your hook essentially, and we crochet around that, leaving just the front loop really nice and clean. Like that's what I have here. What you would do as you're going around is you would put your border stitch, you would treat that bump or that butt or that front loop as your stitch, and you will go underneath that. All right. So really quickly, everybody with me as far as understanding how the stitch markers are worked. All right. Awesome. Adriana says that she's never thought of using stitch markers to make quadrants. Girl, I've been doing it for so long. It's the only way I can make sure my work is even on stuff because I just can't do it otherwise. I do the same thing, everybody. When I'm doing buttonholes, I plan out where I want my buttonholes to be. If somebody tells me to space stitches out, it is such a great way to be able to work stitches out like this. All right, cool. It says you guys are loving the stitch markers. Awesome. I'm going to go back to this so that way I can get down to this bottom edge and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So let's go back here and I'm not going to correct anything here as far as making them consistent. I'm just going to keep going. I want you guys just to see. And again, these are just single crochet rows. All right. So there is and this is tricky, right? Because this one here, that stitch there, it's a chain right there. And then there's the single, right? There's the chain. And then there's my single and there's the stitch. So this here, if I put my hook in this way, like all the way in here, this is actually, this here is the center of my single crochet on that row. All right. I tend to come over here to this chain where the chain one is, and I put my hook in through that chain one. I like the way it looks. Do you have to do that? No, but I like the way that looks. I use my turning chains a lot. I mean, to me, it just looks good. I don't have to. Whatever you decide to do, you just want to be consistent with it. When I come over here to the actual stitch and I put my hook through that, you can see still gives a nice look. You know what I mean? Still gives a nice look. This one, this is an actual stitch I'm going to put through. This would be the actual stitch. See? You just want to make sure they're spaced out as evenly as possible. So I'm just going to keep going and going through the chains like I did. When I get to the end. And guys, sometimes I will do like a preferred way like this, and then I'll get down a row and I'm like, you know what? I really don't like that. I don't like the way that looks. And then I end up ripping it out and starting over. So don't be afraid to do that. And always like check it out. Like stop, pause, check out your work and make sure that it's looking the way you want it to and that it's not rippling too much or that you have the stitch count correct. Okay. Let me get to the end. I'm sorry. It takes me just a little bit here, but I have a little tiny swatch, which is good. You'll notice that I tend to, I mean, and this holds true also when I work into my chains, I tend to work through what looks like, you know, two legs or two V's that I'm working through almost all the time because I think it looks better. Now, here's the tricky part, okay? Down here, I turned my corner. I came down my edge. This looks nice, neat, and clean. I would be happy with it. But down here is the trick, right? It's like, okay, you've worked into the stitch. This is technically the bottom of that stitch. So am I going to put my 3 single crochets into this stitch to have it turn? Or am I going to put my 3 down here into this stitch and have it turn, right? Because all of my stitches along here are going to be worked down here. And honestly, here's my response is whatever looks best and whatever makes the stitch count come out correct. So because I'm not doing any particular stitch count, let's look at it both ways. So let's say this is the last stitch. I'm not going to treat that as a stitch. And I just want to put 3 right here. So let's do it. Let's put 3 here. So it's 1, 2, and this would be 3. You see how the third one, it essentially like overlaps where that chain would be. Okay. You see that? You see that? And then if you look at the back, you're going to see you kind of get this bump. All right. I would not be a fan of that. That is not something I would want on mine. So I would end up bringing that back, taking a look here, say that my stitch count wasn't right if I went into that. I might even try and undo that one. And I might put my last one down here and see what that looks like. So I'm going into that exposed loop from the previous and say, oh, wow, well, that looks much better. I'm not getting any weird nubbin back here, right? So that looks a lot better to me. Okay. So to me, it's like, is working into that post like I did first off and working down there going to look all right? Or do I need to skip that post and just go directly down there? You make that decision and you go with it. Looks like John's home. Okay. I'm going to pause here for a second to make sure you guys are doing all right. Spark says likes the edge too. Jan Patterson says not sure about the post. I'll talk about the post a little bit more. Sandra Peter says, I sure do rip out more as I learn more just to make my work look better, becoming more of a perfectionist. I understand. Yeah, no back bump. I agree. No back bump. Okay. So we've turned our corner. We've done our 3. Everything looks good. Everything's laying down nice and flat. Great. Now we're working down. These are stitches again, right? But like I said, it's like Marley, I don't have like both legs of my stitch like I did up here. What do I do down here? Well, you would use the loop that you do have. Now, here's the crazy thing, guys. If you had used the back bump only to crochet your first foundation row, that would have left the front loop and the back loop exposed down here, and you would have 2 loops to go into. Do I have my, hold on, let me pull this over. Is it this one? No. Which one did we go into just? I've worn it. Oh, I must have brought it upstairs. Oh, I was going to say, didn't we have one where we just went into, well, here, for example, right here, this one here, right? When we did this, you could see I went in like I normally do, and it left that one loop down there, right? So I would go into that. If I were working along this row and I found these chains, I would actually work into those chains just like I would work into a chain if I was going in this direction. All right. But I'd have to decide that because I might just go into the big space. I'm not real sure what I would do, but I'd have a choice. Am I making sense there? I'm going to look over. Looks like you guys are getting it. Okay. So for this, I have these 1 loops. So I just poke into it and pull up and work my stitch. If you can't grab your loop, use the hook portion of your hook to actually like grab into it, to get into it and work it. All right. So I'm going to go all the way down and get to the end. And because I know that at this end, doing my corner down there looks good, I'm going to do that the same on the other end. And all the while, guys, while you're doing this, I mean, ideally, this round here is to clean things up and to make sure that you can get to the correct stitch count for your border. I will be honest and say sometimes I will do 2 rounds. I'll do the first round where I'm just cleaning things up to make it look nice. And the second round is the round that I would make sure that I have stitch counts correct. So meaning I'd make sure that if I needed, you know, maybe I'd have 25 on one side, but I really need 24, but 25 makes it so that it looks clean. And on the following round, I could do it to where I get to 24 and it looks like it's a nice cleaned up issue. Like I'll do that. All right. So this would be my last chain of that row. So just like on the other side, I'm going to do 3 into this one. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to turn my corner. I'm not going to go into that, right? I'm not going to go into that stitch because this stitch right there represents that one. So I'm not going to worry about that one. I'm going to come up the side. So I can see there's a chain there. I'm going to go into my chain and start working up the side. Let's see, this is just, let's see what you look like here. So that was just with 1 chain. You see that? Like 1 loop. Not a fan of that. I don't like the way that looks. I feel like it's going to just get really big. So I would typically just kind of stick my hook in. I don't know if this makes any sense to you guys. Hopefully it does. Just kind of watching somebody do it and kind of play around with it on your own. The main thing here, guys, is there really is no right and wrong way to do your edging or where to put your hook. You do what looks good for you and what looks good on yours. This is not one of those instances like me and my crocheting over the ends. This is very much me just like do what works best for you and your project. Now, speaking of crocheting over the ends and stuff, this is exactly what the lady did on that blanket I showed you guys when she did her edging with this on my Christmas blanket, and she just crocheted over the ends doing this, thinking it was going to be all right. Now, in some cases where you're floating up like an end or something, it might look all right. But if you're just leaving your ends or your tails out there to be worked around like this, that's not going to look really good. All right. I'm just going to just willy-nilly just kind of just keep going here. I don't like how close I put those or how far apart I put those. This is the part I wish I had somebody here to read your comments to me as I'm just crocheting so I could talk. This is the hard part. While I'm here, I'm going to tell you guys that we're doing single crochets. And if you were in Britain or working a British pattern of some sort, these are actually called double crochets, just so that you know. The symbol in your crochet symbols are the same, but it's called a double crochet. And just thought I'd let you know that. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I always find one side is a little bit harder for me than the other side when I'm working edging. I have no idea why that is, but like this happens to be one of my sides that I find tricky. So I always put it down, just kind of make sure it looks good to me. And I'm going to come back up. And what's going to happen here is when we get to the end, this would be a round, right? Because if it was just a single crochet edge, we wouldn't have went around that corner and worried about doing those increases. But I wanted to mention that here because, you know, why not? We're already talking about it. But if it was just a straight edge, we wouldn't worry about doing any sort of a join or anything along those lines. But when you're working in the round like this, you do have to join at the end of your round, unless you're going to do like something like a spiral. And this is actually something when I learned to knit that threw me off, because when I first made socks, it said join to work in the round, and it didn't tell me how to join. And as a crocheter learning how to knit, it didn't make any sense to me, because when you join to work in the round in crochet, it's usually with what's called a slip stitch, you know, like we use to start off, we used a slip stitch. But you don't do that in knitting, right? You just start knitting. But in crochet, you join with a slip stitch for the most part. There are other stitches you can join with, but this is where I tucked in my ends. So things are a little bit tricky here. Just letting you guys know, when you tuck in your ends, you do want to be a little bit careful when you're going to do an edging on top of them, because it can kind of interfere getting into the stitches if you're going to work into the stitches like I do. If you're working around them, it won't make much of a deal. That does not mean I'm telling you to crochet over your ends. Don't misunderstand me. All right, so I came up. Now I put one right there at the edge of that stitch. And you know what? I'm rethinking that because I have my stitch already started up there, right? So for the same reason of down here, I'm going to undo that one. Let's take a peek because I already have one up there. So this would be the last one of that side. This would be the first one of my corner. This here is the first single crochet I did. So I go underneath both loops, yarn over, pull through, and then pull through the one on my loop or on my hook, the loop on my hook. And that is a join with the slip stitch. Now I have 3 in that corner. So now I have a perfectly edged square. Okay, you guys with me on that? Can I come over here and look at your words? Heather Spinden says that she is British, and so she came over here to learn the terminology so that she can work in both. Well, congratulations and welcome, Heather. So you can say if I'm correct too. The single crochet in American is a single crochet, but in British terms, it would be a double crochet. And I think that your slip stitch is a single. That's my understanding, I do believe. And let's see here. Mona says, so learning to read charts would make crocheting in English patterns so much easier. Good to know. Absolutely, Mona. Absolutely. At least that's what I find. I think you guys are getting this, right? I think you guys are getting it. I think cool. Marina says it's making total sense. Fantastic. So as I was saying before, you guys, this is essentially to create your canvas so that way you have the same number of stitches. Everything's really nice and balanced. So that way you can build an edging on it. All right. So that's what you typically would do in edging. Now, having said that, could you stop right here? Could you make this to where this was the end of your edging? Absolutely. You don't have to do anything more than just that. That cleans everything up nice and neat. But for the most part, this is where you would start. Then just like if you were doing anything else in knitting also, guys, it's at this point, every time you'd get to those corner stitches, so you can mark your corner stitches, like don't be afraid to mark them. But when you get to those corner stitches, you're going to work that increase every time you get to that corner. So you're no longer going to have that question of, well, where do I put my stitch? Like we did down here, right? When it was like, do I put it there? Do I put it there? Where's my corner stitch? Well, we have established what our corner stitch is now. So we would make sure that we're always, whenever we get to those corner stitches, we work those increases, however they're written in the pattern. Okay. All right. So I'm going to switch up here. I'm going to come back over here to my face. Hopefully this is working for all of you. So I'm also going to take a look at the thingy here. Why is this not working? Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm going to do a share screen and we're going to come back here and just review what we've already reviewed. So we went through number 1. Number 2, it says work the first row around of the base edge of the item with the main color for a cleaner look. Makes sense. We know how to do that now. These base edge rows or rounds are made on the right side of the fabric. We talked about that already. When working along the crochet stitch edge, it is necessary to work under both loops of the stitch. Talked about that. This just like as if you were going into the crochet stitch as normal. You'd work through it just like it would be normal. Number 5, when working along the crochet row edge, you work around the post or the turning chain of the first or the last chain of the row, or you work into the post or the turning chain. And that's what I showed you the 2 differences. Bottom line is, guys, just put your hook in where you think it looks good and it's going to get you the correct stitch count. And if you're doing it with the main color, chances are it's all going to really look really nice and cohesive and clean anyway, so you won't have to stress too much about it, okay? Number 6, when working along the crochet edge, it is necessary to evenly space the stitches as best you can to prevent the fabric from pulling too much due to too few stitches or rippling because you have too many stitches. Use stitch markers to divide into sections or quadrants to help with this. I showed you how to do that. It's fantastic. Here's a little tip also, guys. When you put all of those stitches in your quadrant, On that last stitch you made, take your stitch marker and put it into that last stitch you made so that you know that if you have to rip back, you know that when you rip back to that stitch, that's where you last left it with the correct stitch count of the quadrant. All right, does that make sense? So put that stitch marker on the last stitch. Like if, for our example, we were talking about doing 5, 5, 5, and 5. Once I would get those first 5 stitches in the first quadrant, I'd take my first stitch marker off, put it into that 5th stitch, and then continue on to try and get my next 5 stitches. And now I have a point of reference to rip back to should I have to do that. All right. Number 7, general rule of thumb for stitching space ratio. Okay. General rule of thumb, 1 single crochet edge stitch for each single crochet row. And guys, that's because a single crochet stitch is roughly a square. Knitting, it's not that way, right? Knitting is much wider and squattier, but crochet is very much like a square. And that's going to be important when we're talking about adding edging to your knitting. Okay. Crochet is much more of a square. So it's a 1-for-1 ratio when it's in single crochets. When it comes to double crochets, you all we all know that a double crochet for us is roughly like 2 stacked single crochets, right? So depending on how you crochet and how big your double crochets are will make this ratio for you it'll what's the word I'm looking for? It'll depend on the size of your double crochets. So for the rule of thumb, it's supposed to be 3 double crochets for every 2 rows of double crochets. Did I say that right? 3 single crochets for 2 rows of doubles. So if you have 2 rows of double crochets, ideally you'd want 3 single crochets there. I will tell you that that very seldom holds true for me. More often than not, I want 2 single crochets for each double crochet I have. I might do that for several, and then I might do one where I just have 1. I usually, for my type of crochet, I have to adjust that ratio. It doesn't ever hold true for me as an always sort of thing. So just remember that that's really just a rule of thumb. Like rule of thumb is if you have 2 rows of double crochets, you're going to want 3 single crochets across there. But for me, I usually would have to do 4. I have to do 2 singles in each double. And then every now and again, I might have to make it to where I just put 1 single in a double to make it so that it doesn't ripple. But that's me. So I wanted to make sure that you know that if you end up being just like me, it's not a bad thing. Just know how to read your crochet and you'll be just fine. Okay. Number 8, when working around the corner, you must make room for the turn in the fabric by adding stitches. You can do this by adding stitches or a chain. Now, in our example, what we just did, we added stitches. We did a single crochet to finish our stitch. Then we did a single crochet for our corner. And then we did a single crochet for our first stitch along the rows, right? If we wanted to, we could have just done like a chain 1 instead of a stitch for the corner. We could have done anything we wanted for that corner, whatever's going to make it so that corner has that curve to fit our needs. All right. So we could do anything we want there. Sort of a side note here, when you notice that instructions are written inside parentheses, that usually, I must be that my camera is unplugged for some reason. That's why it keeps turning off. Give me just 1 second. Let me just change my camera. So strange. We're going to go to that camera and that should work. There you go. So we're just going to my other camera. My other camera, the battery must be dead. So when you are looking at the instructions and you see a set of instructions, like inside parentheses, that's letting you know that everything that's inside of those parentheses are going to go into one particular stitch or space. So it's essentially telling you, hey, everything that's right here, we're going to put it into that stitch. All right. Make sense? Okay. Y'all with me? It's a really important thing that we'll, keep learning more and more as we start reading more and more patterns. Number 9, when making stitch count adjustments to fit your fabric, remember to maintain the stitch multiple. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. We'll talk about that more here in just a little bit. Crochet edgings can be made flat, worked back and forth, Okay, so we could like a log cabin. We could work back and forth along the row edge, and then turn our work and work back and forth along the stitch edge, and then turn it and work back and forth along the row edge. You could do that. More often than not, edgings are done in the round. So that way you work all the way around something if you're working like on a blanket. But obviously if you're working around like a collar, that would be back and forth, and you'd work your shaping at the shaping points. Self-explanatory. I mean, you guys got this kind of stuff for sure. Number 11, last but not least, a little tweaking or a fudge here or there can make an edge or stitch count work with your fabric will blend right into the fabric. For example, say you're supposed to get to the end of something and you're supposed to only have, you're supposed to skip a stitch and you have an extra stitch and you're just like, wait a minute, I have 3 stitches. I'm supposed to have 2 stitches. Don't let it end your day. Don't rip out all of your stitches, guys. Just fudge it, skip an extra stitch, or create like a single crochet 2 together or a double crochet 2 together to fill the space of where that extra stitch is, but get down to the correct stitch count. As long as you're not doing that all the time, I mean, it's just going to blend in. Nobody's ever going to see it. Fudging can be your friend, especially in crochet. All right. Last but not least, don't be scared. Don't be scared. You've actually already learned a little bit of this as you've been following along with the BiCrafty Bootcamp crochet lessons. Remember when we added the ties to both of our headbands? Remember when we did our headbands and we worked along the edges here of our headbands, guys? You've already done this. You've already done this. This is nothing to be scared about at all. Don't be scared. All right. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about working in the rounds more next week. So that's why I was like, put a pin in it, even though I kind of worked a little bit about that today. But let's talk about knit fabric. And before I do that, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to take a look at your questions so that way I can see what you guys are thinking here so far. Okay. Let's see here. So I'm going to scroll up just a little bit. And Wendy Shield says that she read Heather's comment with an accent. I think that's cute. Jasasu says it's pretty clear. Thank you. Spark says, my problem is putting too many stitches on my side. Spark, I have the same problem. And so honestly, for me, I usually will use my stitch markers and then try and even them out the best I can. So that way I don't have too many stitches. That's my best piece of advice when it comes to that. Samson says, Marley, I noticed that one corner is sharp while one corner is rounded. Is there a way around not having a rounded corner? So my thing there would be, if this was like, if you were just doing this and then stopping, you could do more of like a chain. Like the more stitches you put around the corner are going to give you more round. To have a corner that's more sharp, you could do a single and then a half double for your corner stitch to have it a little bit bigger and sharp, and then a single. There's a lot of things to play around with, but here, when you're just doing the base edging like this, I wouldn't worry too much about it, because as you transition into doing your edging or your border, that's really going to take more precedence, and you're never going to notice ones that's more sharp or more rounded. Ideally, that's the way it should happen. I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, it's general geometry, right? If you want something a little bit more pointy like this, just like when we were doing our chevron wave or our long wave pattern, we used the height of the stitches to our advantage. You could do the same thing at the corners. We already talked about how you have to have that extra stitch in the corner to make that nice round go around the corner. You could have that stitch taller. You could use more stitches to have it bigger. You could play around with that for sure. So there's lots of wiggle room there. Jill says, I keep forgetting that I'm on Central Time and I have to go and watch the rerun. I understand, my friends. Eva says, I'm just joining in. What's the project under the Ogos? Oh man, there's so many projects over here, you guys. I don't even know what to tell you. There's so many projects. Let's see here. Spark says the stitch markers per quadrant, especially on the sides, I've missed a lot and I'll rewatch to refresh myself. Spark, definitely, that will help you out so much. Julia, Marley, can you check the comment from Samson regarding rounded corners? I just did that. There you go, my friend. Joyce, proportional might be the word that you are looking for. Yes, that's exactly the word I was looking for. Sandra, for me, I use 2 single crochets per double crochet row, but I also use a hook one size smaller for my side borders. That is a very good idea. And something we haven't talked about too much, right? And because it kind of goes along with gauge. So Sandra, what you're really doing is you're making your single crochets a little bit smaller so that way you can fit those stitches that you need into those 2 double crochets, like they fit probably much better for you. Because at the end of the day, it all boils down to gauge, right? What's your row gauge versus your stitch gauge and matching those 2 things up. So yes, absolutely. If dropping down a hook size to make it so that the stitches line up correctly for you, you get the correct stitch count, you get the fabric you're looking for, you absolutely could do that. Now, where I would hesitate is if you're dropping down a stitch size to get the correct number of stitches along the sides that you need, and then go back up to the size that you are going to use for the rest of your border, because then you might actually get rippling because they're not going to be the same. But yeah, you absolutely could do that. That's a very good point. Very similar to when knitters will use a smaller needle to make a brim or a cuff, and then they use a bigger needle to make the body of their hat or their mittens. Sort of the same idea there. Let's see here. I love the tip about the half double in the corners. Yeah, I do that a lot, actually. Julia says the changing the hook size is a good tip. Good. All right, good. So it feels like we're caught up. It feels like you guys are doing pretty good. So far, so good. You can see how you do that base. Once you have that base established, then it's just a matter of going and then reading your chart or reading your instructions for your border. So before I jump in to talk about, actually, no, let's do this. I'm going to talk about working your stitches along your crochet. Okay. Cause it's very similar to this. We're going to just talk about it briefly. Then we're going to talk about going from how you have your base now, how do you transition that over to your edging or to your border? And then from there, we're going to take a look at the pattern for this week. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and go back down to my hands and unmute. Hopefully I am back down here to my hands real quick. I'm going to have to grab some more yarn here. Actually, let's do this. Look, I taught beginner knitting, or like knitting 201 the other day. So this was my little swatch that I did with them. So let me rip this out. Let's have a little bit of relaxation time watching somebody rip out their work, right? But why not just reuse some yarn? Okay. So right here. First off, we all know that stockinette stitch naturally tends to curl on itself. And often somebody will tell you, oh, your stockinette stitch is curling, you need some sort of an edging to it, right? So you can have edging or an edging or ribbing or border. Like down here, this is a broken rib border. Like it's so pretty. It's really, I like it a lot. This is just plain stitches up here. If you guys have never done this before, I put a yarn over for every, for the number of the size hook I used or needle I used. So I know what size needle I used for this, but it naturally curls. So say you've created this, it's a scarf. You're like, oh, darn it, I want it to have a border. Let's add a border. So once again, with crochet, you can add your yarn in here with a slip stitch. All right. Or you can start with a standing single crochet or a standing stitch in general. This is sometimes called a foundationless stitch. Start off with a slip knot on your hook. We're going to come up here. This is my bind off edge. Notice how the bind off edge looks very similar to crochet stitches, doesn't it? Right? Looks like very similar to crochet stitches. Now, the trick here is that, remember, a stitch in knitting tends to be wider than the rows of knitting. So for the most part, usually a 1-for-1 for your knit across will be pretty close. You might have to fudge it a little bit. Where we really have to pay attention to is on the rows. So let's start up here. And so that I don't have to go all the way down this, I'm just going to kind of come down here midway and start here. So I have a slip knot on my hook, and I'm going to put my hook underneath both of those loops or legs. Do you want to call those legs, right? Go underneath both of them, yarn over, pull up a loop. So now I have 2 loops on my hook. It looks like a single crochet, right? I want to make sure they're nice and tight. Yarn over and pull through 2. What that's going to do is it places the slip knot, it's up here, and it makes it so that that slip knot loop that was on my hook is now the top of that stitch. Okay, so I joined with a standing single crochet. And then you go underneath the stitches, just like you did before, underneath both of those loops, I should say, and you work across. Now, can you make adjustments to this? Yeah. If you wanted to work into the actual stitch right here, you could do that. Sort of, this is actually called waistcoat stitch in crochet. You could go between the V, go in, yarn over, pull up, and come around. Now what that's going to do, you're essentially encasing those legs up there. So it's going to make a bigger finish, but you could do that. Okay, I'll show you again. Here's my V. I went right through the center of my V and did a single crochet that way. All right, now I could do that. It's bigger and bulkier, but I could do that. But ideally you want to go through the legs of the stitch. Okay, so I'm going to get to the end. And if you have to mess around to make this work as far as fudging it to make sure that the stitch counts are right, where you don't go, maybe you can't go like stitch for stitch, you have to skip one every now and again, you can do that. And say if you skip one, you're like, oh man, but that looks like it leaves a hole. Well, then do a single crochet two together. So right here, if I do this, I'm still getting one stitch, but I've completed that. So it won't be as noticeable. Does that make sense? So you can play around with it. Same thing here. When you get to the end, we're going to have to play around here because we're at the end. I'm going to go around the corner here. And for this one, when you work down the edge for knitting, okay, just like when you're picking up stitches and knitting or doing anything else or seaming, you want to make sure you're staying down the same column. So whatever column you work down, you want to make sure you're maintaining down that same column. So because I've already established what column I'm going to essentially by my corner here, I've established that I'm going down this column, I'm going to keep going down this column. Now you have a decision to make. Just like up here where I went through stitches or I went through the back leg, you have to decide what's best for you, right? Am I going to go down the column and pierce a stitch and go around? Maybe that looks the best for you. And when you're doing this, it's usually four knit stitches for 3 single crochets. All right, so you just kind of mess around with it, and then I might skip one and go down to the next. And then let's just play this around. You see, I'm still going down the same column. And this, I'm going into the full stitches. All right, now if you wanted to, you could go out here on the outside. And I don't know if you can tell, it's like, I do this a lot when I pick up stitches for my socks. I go in this leg and then the leg underneath, it's like it's diagonal and pick up. Now that takes me out of that column, right? But if I make that decision and do that all the way down to begin with, I could do that. You just have to decide what works best for you. All right, now that spaces those out a lot. So it definitely makes it so it's a little bit bigger. But for the most part up here, look, it's pretty even. It looks pretty good. I don't like those ones. But does that make sense? So once you have this base, now you have these nice single crochets. Already my piece isn't wanting to curl on me. And then you can go back and you can begin to build a border along this. Okay? Everybody with me on that one so far? Okay, awesome, awesome. Brenda, I love this too. I think it's so pretty. But this is adding your edging to a crochet or to knitting. Now, could you add it directly to just your knit? Could I add like shells directly to this? Yeah, you absolutely could if that's the look you're going for. But more often than not, doing this base ridge, or not base ridge, but a base edge around and then going into your border will make it look cleaner and make it look nicer. Okay. All right. So we talked about this, talked about edging on knitting, because once you can get your stitches in your knitting, right? Once we do this, now it's it's to the next step. And so it's both of us, right? It's whether you're worked your edges into your crochet or your edges into your knitting. We're going on to the next step for the same reason, right? We want to create our stitches. So this is where I want to do a share screen with you guys. So give me just a second. Let me come back here to where it's to my face, and I got to pull up the picture I want to share with you. How are we doing so far? Everybody good? Everybody feel good? We've been on here a little while. I've been talking a lot, so sorry. I want to talk about a really basic edging. A seed stitch edging is what I'm going to call it, or a moss stitch edging, because it's actually one of my favorite edgings, and it's a very easy one to do and add to a piece to make it look something special. And I'm gonna show it to you in chart format, and then I want to also show you where I have used it, and so that way you can see what it looks like. So give me just a second. And so that way I can pull up where I've used it. So that way you can see it. It's just so much fun. So while I'm doing this, how are we feeling so far? How's everybody feeling? I just want to make sure everybody's doing good. Feeling fantastic, feeling fine. And copy, put this over here and paste. Got it. All right, so I can show you where I used it. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and take a look at this particular chart. Okay, so this chart, we're going to glance over it and take a peek. All right, so here we go. Seed stitch edging. Now, the good news is you guys know how to do these stitches. This is a single crochet and a chain. But when you're reading an edging like this, an edging pattern, you'll notice here at the start, this is showing you in the round. All right, so we're going to discuss briefly in the rounds, but we're going to go more in depth with this next week, guys. But the first thing about reading this chart, I know it's in the round because I can see that you join with the slip stitch. Those little dots are joined with the slip stitch, and you keep going around. All right. Does that make sense? All right. What I want you to notice here is the yellow bit. The yellow bit, that's the stitch multiple for this particular border. So you need a multiple of 2 stitches plus 1. So whatever your stitch count is along the side, you're going to need 2 stitches plus 1. And then you have your 1 stitch at the corner here. That's our corner stitches, right? Those 3 there, those are our corner stitches. All 3 of those go all into 1 stitch in our corner if we were to have a corner show up. So if we were planning out this particular pattern, it's pretty simple. We're going to do a single crochet, chain 1. So it would be single crochet into a single crochet, chain 1, skip a single crochet, in the next single crochet. Pretty easy. You would do that all the way to the last single crochet at the corner. And at the corner, you do a single, chain 1, single. All right. I'm going to show you how this works here in a minute. If you were doing something really basic like this is a really good beginner edging because it's a really easy one to fudge once you get your initial single crochets done all the way around your piece. Because if I get down here and say I have 2 stitches instead of 1, I just skip the 2 stitches and you're never going to see it. Okay. So for example, you guys saw me do this edging on this piece right here. I have no idea how many stitches I have there. Like I have no idea, but I know that if I start this particular edging on this piece, I'll be able to work it up and fudge my way through and make it work. And then on the following rounds for this particular one, I would put a single crochet in each of the chain 1 spots, and I would chain over top of all of my singles. It's really super easy. All right. So I'm going to show you how that works. So if I'm down here by my hands again, and talk to me, guys. If you guys need me to slow down or anything particular, please let me know. All right. So this one here, I'm starting here at the beginning. Let's just go with it. I know that I need a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. So let's start right here. I'm going to start with my chain 1 and I'm going to single crochet into the first single. I'm going to chain 1 skip one, and single crochet in the next. Chain one, skip one, single crochet in the next. So I'm going to do this all the way down to the end. Skip one, chain one, skip one, chain one, skip one, chain one, skip one. You're going to see when you're doing something very easy like this, this is one literally you could make any blanket, do an edging just to make it so that it lays flat and looks nice, and then do this edging to make it work. Now, ideally, this one's already worked out great, right? Because I chain one, I skip one, that puts me here at my corner. Told you it's going to work out no matter what. So I'm going to remove my corner, and in my corner here, I'm going to do a single, chain one, and a single. So that chain one, guys, that's my new corner. So I got to find single. Did I do a chain one? I thought I did. Yeah, chain one. And a single. Maybe. So right here, this space here, that's my new corner. So I can put my marker there. So I turn, chain one, skip one, single, chain one, skip one, single, and I'll go down to the next corner, okay? Skip one, single, chain one, skip one, blah, 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 right? But let's say if I get to this next corner, maybe it will have a different stitch count. I have no idea. I did not plan for this because I wanted to show you how this would work. Because I wanted to give you a very simple, easy beginner one that you could take and just, you know, do it literally on anything. All right, so this one's going to be different, right? So I chain one, I skip one, I do a single right here. So now I'm supposed to chain one, skip one, well, that would be my middle, right? And then go here. So I have a choice to do. I either keep my chain one there and then just don't skip one and work my corner here, right? This would be fudging. So let's do that. Let's see what that would look like. So I did my chain one like I'm supposed to, but it's just like I came up a stitch short. Oops, so I did one single, chain one, and then one single. So right there in between, that's where my new corner is. I set that down. Are you ever gonna know? No, you're never gonna know. And then as I build the next one, it's gonna go right there. You're never gonna know. So fudging that one little stitch right there is not the end of the world, and everything's gonna come out really nice and neat. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody? Like you're not gonna know, so you just carry on. So like I did those. Let's do my chain one, skip one. Let's go around this so you can just see. And with this particular stitch, guys, if you change colors like every so often, you get like a pop of color with it, and it just looks really good. And because of those chain ones, it's not like super stiff. You have a nice little flexibility to the edging. But look how great that, I mean, it's such a simple border. And I've used this before on other things. So let me show you what I've used it for. This here is called the modern, or the chic modern mosaic blocks. And you can see it's mosaic stitches. If you did my tournament of stitches 2 years ago, you guys, as knitters, probably learned how to do mosaic stitches in knitting. You can go back and do it in crochet. And this is what I used. That's the mosaic stitch pattern, but that border right there, that is what I just showed you. That border right there is what I just showed you. And it's just that there are a couple rows of my platinum color before I jump in with the lace again. And so it just makes such a very simple, delicate, interesting border that you can literally add to anything. And it just makes it look that little nice, scrumptious piece. Look at that. Look how great that looks. And that was simply just starting out with the first round of single crochets just to get everything set and then make it happen. Isn't that cool? How are we feeling? Let me see here. I'm going to come back over here and see how everybody's doing. Come back. Okay, so Monique says crochet borders make everything better. It's like the icing on the cake. I absolutely agree. Briga Rose, charts make no sense to me. I need to be shown. Hopefully they'll start to make more sense to you as you keep going along. They're a lot of fun to work up. So they're just so much fun. And Holly says, is the tag for the knitted projects to keep up with what you have used for your needles and patterns and yarn? Are you talking about these? Are the tags for the knitted projects to keep up with what you use for needles, pattern, and yarn? These, yeah, these I just tagged my swatch so I know what I use and what I did it with. But yeah. All right. So you understand how to add an edging around your basic crochet, right? And you just make that work. We're talking about basic crochet. We're not talking about any sort of lace crochet or anything like that. Like that changes up just a little bit to where you might have to even up rows or something to make things clean up. But for the most part, you understand basic edging, right? Hopefully you understand the whole idea of, because you're knitters, you should understand, like, you have a set number of your stitch pattern repeat. You need to have a set number of stitches for that, which is what makes that basic edging around the basic single crochets around really useful, because then you have like a set number of stitches to work whatever stitch count you're going to do. And then you learned how to do it on your knitting. So you'll be able to transition all of this onto your knitting. And now I want to go into where we're talking about the grannies and the shells. Okay. So if you guys are ready, I'm going to go back over to our lesson plan, and we're going to skip the tips for working into your knitting, because I just showed you how to do that. And we're going to discuss the actual pattern for this week. So you could read through all these tips if you want down here. These are actually the books I was mentioning to you guys. So if you're a knitter and you don't have these books, these are ones I absolutely recommend. Clara Parks, she's absolutely amazing. Knitter's Book of Yarn, Knitter's Book of Wool, Knitter's Book of Socks. Those are great for crocheters also, all of them except the socks book. But the Knitter's Book of Yarn and Knitter's Book of Wool are exceptionally written books with really outstanding information in them. If you're interested, they're really great. But just like those are important to knitters, these books here by Edie Ekman are equally important. She has a bunch of other books too. These are the ones specific to borders. I cannot recommend these two books enough. Like I said, you guys, I own 2 copies of each of these books on my shelf. And I also have the Kindle version. So I have 3 copies total of these books, and I use them a lot. And they're all very, very much so written with the premise of having your basic edging, and then you work from there. They're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful books. Okay, so this is more information of stuff we learned this week. The chroma worsted, that's the yarn that I'm using for this week's project. As we mentioned, I Love Yarn Day is happening this Saturday. And so you can actually get 20% off your yarn order from We Crochet and Knit Picks. So if you have not picked up your yarn, I highly recommend picking up your yarn. I wish I could give you yarn amounts for all of the different projects that we're doing till the end of the year, but I know there's going to be more sales going on. So you'll be able to take advantage of that. But I've given you a lot of information for the different yarn you're going to need for the next few lessons. The link is right here. So you can click on that and see what other yarn you're going to need. But for this right here, these are the basic instructions for what we're going to be working on. It's completely customizable as far as the size you're going to make. I wrote it up essentially to be used for like 1.5 balls of yarn. You could stop at 1 ball. You could go on to 5 balls. You could do whatever you want. So it's completely customizable. When we talk about gauge, I'm talking about the chain 1 double crochet set. And so I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But essentially it's 4 of those stitch pattern repeats equals 4 inches and 7 rows equals 4 inches. Materials, we're using the BiCrafty Chroma. Now, there's also Chroma Twist. I don't know if you guys can see me on screen. There's also Chroma Twist that you could use. It would just look a little bit different. It's a more wound yarn than just a roving, but you could use that. And this is our first venture into using a superwash wool. We've been using cotton up to this point. I'm hoping that jumping into a wool or a nylon-based yarn will help maybe with any sort of tension or ease stuff that you might have problems with. Do you have to use wool? No, absolutely not. If you're looking for an alternative yarn, I will tell you like Red Heart Unforgettable would be a good alternative yarn, and that's 100% acrylic yarn. You guys already know that I'm a fan of the BiCrafty hooks and the Touche crochet hooks. There's the links to those. Stitch markers are purely optional. They're there for you if you need them, but I did not write the pattern for stitch markers. Then of course your tapestry needle. Here's the abbreviations. And then here's your diagram, to which a lot of us are be like, Marley, that's really small. Well, you should be able to click it and it will take you to a bigger image. So you should be able to click it to see a larger image of the stitch diagram. So you shouldn't have any problems there whatsoever. Okay, guys. So just remember that. You can click it and it will be a little bit bigger. All right, guys. All right, so let's go back. Here's the notes. It's a bandana style triangle shawl. All that means is it's smaller. It's supposed to be wrapped around your neck and worn. It's pretty easy stuff. When you're changing yarn, because this is a long color change yarn, if you start your color off where you ended, it'll just make the color sequence flow the same. And again, the shawl size is completely customizable. You use as much yarn as you want to make it as large as you want. All right, so we're going to start with the shawl body, which starts with the chain 4, slip stitch into the first chain to form a ring. To which the crowd says, Marley, you said we aren't working in the round. Why are we doing this? Well, here's the thing, guys. Just like in some knitting patterns, they'll have you start off with like you're putting a bunch of loops, pulling them through one big loop, and it all just kind of disappears. Like you just kind of have that round circle, it disappears. That's essentially what's going to happen with this piece. So as we look at the chart, you can see down here, it starts off with 4 chains, and then you have your slip stitch right here. And then we jump into 5 chains and we begin our stitch pattern. And then 5 chains begin our stitch pattern. 5 chains begin our stitch pattern. So even though this shows that we're starting off in the round, it's just a way for this to be nice and closed. We could start off with what's called an adjustable ring or a magic loop or something else. We could even put all of this into one chain, like just chain 2 and put it all into one chain. I don't like the way that looks as much as I like the way this looks. So that's why we start off with this chain 4. Think of it as like when you start off a knit shawl, you could start off with a tab. You could start off with just like 3 stitches into one. Like there's so many different ways to start. The same thing holds true when it comes to crochet. Once we get this round circle done and we join with a slip stitch, we're going to chain 5. And this chain 5 counts as a treble crochet and a chain 1. Now, because we talked about stack stitches last week, could we do this as a stacked treble crochet? Absolutely. We could stack 3 single crochets right on top of each other and have that take the place of 4 of those chains and then do a chain 1. You could do that. I did not write the pattern that way. I wanted you to just kind of see how this would work up with chains, but you absolutely could do it that way. You could start this off with a stacked treble. Once you do that, we're going to place all of these stitches into that ring. And do you remember when I said to you, when crochet patterns are written out to which all of the stitches are supposed to be worked into one stitch or space, it's written to where everything's in a parenthesis, right? What does that say right there? Here's our 5 chains. First one counts as a treble crochet. Next one is the chain, or the first 4 count as a treble. The next one is the chain 1. And then we have a parenthesis here. And this is letting you know you're going to put everything inside of these parentheses into that ring, not into a special chain. We're putting it into that huge ring, into that big space. And then we're going to turn. So we're not joining, we're not working in the round, we are turning our work. And we know that also because this says row, okay? Let's go back over here. So we get down here, we turn, we chain 5. We put 3 double crochets into this chain 1 space. Chain 1, and we skip all of these doubles, and we come over here to where we have 3 chains. These 3 chains are going to be our center spine of our shawl. And every time we're at our center spine of our shawl, think of that as the corner of the square that we just worked on together. This is our corner where we have to turn the corner. So in this corner, we're going to work an increase. So our increase for this example, instead of it being 3 singles, it's 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets. So this turns our corner. Our chains here, right? This is our repeat, right? The 3 doubles and a chain 1 and 3 doubles is the same thing. But that extra chain right there, that's our corner. That is our corner. So every time we get to these chain 3 corners, corner or center or whatever you want to say, you will always put 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets into that center chain 3 space. Okay. Once you've done that, you've essentially turned the corner to work on this side of the shawl, this half of the shawl. You continue on with the chain 1. This would be 3 double crochets into that chain 1 space, chain 1, and then the written instructions tell you to do a treble crochet into that 4th chain. And that's just going to make it so that it looks nice and clean coming up. If you do the stacked single or the stacked trebles, you guys, this just means you would do 3 doubles into your chain 1 space, and you would do your treble into the top of your stacked treble. Everybody with me so far? Once you get these 2 rows done, this is your repeat. You're going to notice, I mean, these are virtually the same. You chain 5, 3 double crochets into the chain 1 space, chain 1, 3 double crochets into the next chain 1 space, and you repeat that. You repeat the chain 1, 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets until you get down to where you're at your corner again. When you get down to where you're at your corner again, you do a chain 1, work your corner, and then you're over here. You're at chain 1, double crochet in the next chain 1 space. And you do that until you get down to your edge. And when you get to the edge, it's going to be 3 double crochets into the chain 1 space, chain 1, and then a treble into the 4th chain of those 5 turning chains. And then you work your way back. You'll notice on the way back, you have an extra chain 1 here. So you're going to have another 3 double crochet set, right? So as each row grows, you'll have a new 3 double crochet set or a 3 double crochet chain 1 repeat for each half of the shawl. You'll have an extra there. Okay. So you keep repeating this until the piece is as large as you want it to be. So for me, here I am. Here's this. By working the trebles at the ends, we're letting our ends extend out a little bit more than our center. So it gives us a bigger wingspan. All right. So we're getting a bigger wingspan out there. So it makes it nice and straight. See that? And you just keep going. You keep going until this is as big as you want it to be. And so the way we wrote this out, the wingspan is going to be bigger or get longer as your center spine gets longer, but you're going to notice the wingspan is going to keep getting longer. It's not going to grow like it's a square, right? It's a little bit longer along the edge. So as you keep going, you make this as big as you want. That's when you would transition to your edging. Once it's as big as you want, you transition to your edging, which you could be like, well, Marley, you said that the edging, you start off with that single crochet base because it makes it really easy. And yeah, you could do that. You could do that on this one. You could. But the edging that I chose for this works so seamlessly as far as the working into those chain 1 spaces that it works really well. So we should be able to keep going and make this work together as long as you end where you have enough of those repeats to work across. Okay, does that make sense? So for this one, let's take a peek down here one more time. As you get to the border for this one, when it's time, you can see here that you're going to want to have an even number of these chain one spaces, right? You want to have an even number because it takes 2 of the chain one spaces to complete one full shell repeat. Does that make sense to everybody? It's going to take 2 of these chain one spaces to make one full shell repeat. So what will happen is when it's time for your shell, you'll chain 1 and you'll single crochet into the top of your treble. Then you're going to skip this 1 chain right there. We're not going to work into that. Whereas before we worked into them, for this particular border, I'm not working into it. I'm going to chain 1. And when I do this chain 1, I'm going to be skipping. Does that work? No. I'll be skipping this chain and those doubles. Then in this chain 1 space, I'm going to put 7 double crochets into that chain 1 space. Then I skip all those doubles, chain 1, and I put a single into that chain 1 space. So as long as I finish to where I have an even number of chain 1 spaces before I get to my center, you'll have enough of these to work down your row. Does that make sense to everybody? If for some reason I stopped on this particular row, if I stopped on this row, I wouldn't have enough spaces, right? Because I'd only have 3. That's why it's important that you do end with that, you have that row 5. I think I should have been written out that way to make it sure. So 4, and you end with the row 3. Let me make sure. Go back here. Yeah, so you'll end on this row 3, all right, which will have you end with an even, it'll have you end with an even number of chains. Okay, because row 5 here is just a repeat of row 3. So if you end after a row 3, your next row is what you want to make sure you work into. So as you do this repeat all the way down to this last chain, right, before you get to your center, notice you do a chain 1, and then you have 11 double crochets right here to be able to turn that corner. And then you work your way back. All right, so I'm pretty sure you guys are probably saying something over here, so I'm going to come over here and see what you're saying. Let's see here. So we end on a wrong side before you do the border. Sidra, yes, you will, for this particular piece, you'll end on a wrong side. You'll end up after a row 3. So that way you'll be on a right side to be able to do your border. Okay. And let me scroll up. Okay, Joy says it makes sense after you explain the chart. Great. Janice says, yes, it makes sense. Julia says, Rosie, is that for the Stitch Along project? Oh, Rosie's probably asking a question about the Joanne Stitch Along. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back to that. Wally's World says, got it. Makes sense. It's clear. It's beautiful. Looks lovely. Am I reading the chart right? You don't skip that first chain 1, but single crochet into it. Are you talking about the border, Mona? If you're talking about the border on the chart, that first single crochet, I want you to put it into the top of that treble just to keep that line clean. And then you skip the chain 1. So my plan now was, because I'm assuming you guys know how to do the granny part. I think you'll get that just fine. I thought I would work on the shell border on my sample with you guys. I just got to make sure I'm on the correct row because I was just working along before you guys got here. So let me pull this over while I'm doing that. Caitlin says she is loving this with the chroma yarn. That makes me so happy. I like this yarn a lot. It's a roving type yarn, which makes it a little bit tricky to work with a little bit. You don't want to pull on it too tight, but it makes for a very nice finish. And I think it's easy to weave in your ends. And then as you're working, you're probably going to notice a lot less tension on your wrist and your fingers because you're going to have that give of the wool. And then the colors on it are just scrumptious. The way they mesh and mold and meld and fade into one another, I think it looks really nice. All right, cool. I gotta see what row I'm on. So I think I finished on the different row. Let's see, what am I? So I want to be on a right side row. I think I'm on a right side row. And the best way for me to do here, I'm going to count my chain one. So there's 1, 2, 3. Let me see. All right, so I have a chain one here. That's the one I'm going to skip. So then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. So I have the right number of chain one spaces to make my shell pattern work. So this would be, if I wanted to add my shell right now, this is how I would do it. So again, you can make this as large as you want. Make sure you have the right spacing that you want. I'm at the end. Let me make sure here. So I do my chain one. I will single crochet into the top of this treble. So I'm going to single crochet into the top of that treble. Okay. Then I'm going to chain one. I'm going to skip that and skip those 3 doubles and come over here to this next chain one. And I'm going to put 7 double crochets. So 1, 2. Don't let them get too big too, guys. Remember, we talked about holding those stitches, holding the post of the stitch as you create it so that they become nice and consistent and clean. That's going to be very important as you're working this granny stitch piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. Chain one, skip those, go to the next chain one space and do a single. Now what you're going to notice here, guys, let me get a couple more here and I'm going to show you something. I'm going to speed this up a little. I know I'm going fast, but you guys know how to do double crochets, so I'm not going to waste your time going through a double crochet and showing you how to do it, because by now you should know how to do a double crochet. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Chain one, single crochet, chain one, and then work these doubles. Let me do the first one. I'm going to put this down. What you'll notice here, guys, by doing those 7 double crochets, the length of this double crochet is the same height or length as as skipping those 3 doubles. Same thing over here. The single crochet, the chain one, and that double creates that length there so that it's not pinching. It actually makes it so that it's like it lays flat. So the height of this stitch, the height of that stitch coupled with that chain one gives me that skip stitch there. It gives me the space that I need, or the gauge that I need, so that it's not like crumpled up on itself. It makes it so that this entire shell will lay flat. And because this particular border or edging is perfectly coupled with this kind of a stitch pattern, this just looks like it's just an easy transition from this very simple pattern to a very easy shell. Can you guys see that? Okay. If I were to do a shell and a shell and a shell and a shell and a shell, it would all ripple up on each other. But by taking the shell and putting the single right here, it makes it nice and evened out. Okay, now if I were doing this on my knitting, right, technically I could just hold my knitting like this and put, start with a single here and just kind of guesstimate where I wanted to put my 7 shells and then skip some and do that if I didn't do the edging. But if I have my edging here, it makes it so that it lays perfectly balanced there for me already and I don't have to think about it. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. So as I go through this, let's just get through to the end so you can see the corner. And then I will let everybody go so you can have some dinner. I know I haven't eaten dinner yet. John's been home forever now. He's probably totally wondering what I'm doing down here. And I can't forget to give away that awesome gift from We Crochet. So don't leave yet. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. While I'm doing this, if you guys don't mind, hitting that like button if you haven't done it already. And if you will go ahead and leave a comment, not just in the live comments, but in the comment on the video, let me know what your favorite part of BiCrafty Bootcamp is so far? Okay, let's know what your favorite part of BiCrafty Bootcamp is so far. Put that in the comments of this video, not just here on the live, but in the actual comments. And please hit subscribe if you haven't done that. 2, 3, 4, 5, and smash that like button, everybody. Sort of a side note, if you're somebody who wants to make sure you can go back to these videos and such, if you create a playlist on your own channel and you put these videos in your playlist, it makes it very easy for you to find them all later on. So you want a recap of something, it makes it very easy for you to find. So if you wanted to create like a BiCrafty playlist of your own on your channel or on your YouTube site and put them all in there, you could do that. Or say you have videos that are just Marley Bird videos that you really enjoy. You could create your own playlist with Marley Bird, and it would make it really easy to find stuff too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do you guys see how I have to count all the time? If it's more than 5, I tend to have to count. Don't forget those chain ones, you guys. If yours starts to buckle up on itself, it could be that you forgot those chain ones. So make sure you don't forget those. How many of you are like eagerly anticipating me getting to the end here? I'm almost there, almost there. All right, so here we are. I'm a chain 1, and now I come over here, like I have a gnat. So I would come all the way over here, and I will put 11 double crochets into that corner. So that will turn my corner for me and make it so that it looks nice and neat. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, chain 1, and then come over here. I start off with my single and I keep going. Let me do one of these and I'll put it down so you can see what it looks like. Oops. All right, so I'll set this down. Look at that. Look how pretty that is. I mean, come on. So super pretty. And if I wanted to, guys, I mean, I could do this border, and then go back and establish my granny stitch pattern again. Maybe I put it into the center double crochet and make that like the new granny and just continue on so that I have like this really cool sort of wave through it. Like there's a lot of ways you could play around with this. But you can see the start here starts off very pretty, goes all the way down. You get a nice finish down here. I could add tassels. I could do anything I want to this and make it my own. If you make it smaller, one thing I like to do, guys, is once I get things done like this, I actually will fold these over depending on how long I want it. And I will add a button like to here and here because you already have homemade buttonholes there. So you just add 2 buttons and you have buttonholes already made. So like this, and then you just fit this over your head, or instead of putting buttons, cross those over. And just like when you do edging, work an edging around this entire top part here, all the way around, but work through both of these at the same time. so that it creates like a cowl. And so you can have the top of the cowl. So then you would have this be like the front, and then you have a cowl portion up here that can kind of floof around on you. And it's just a nice little accessory piece, which honestly, guys, that's probably what I'm going to do with mine, because I love that idea. I'm loving that idea. But these are just really fun to make and really easy. Great way to use very simple stitches. I know you guys are probably like, wow, that's a lot of granny stitches, but guys, this is quintessential crochet. You can take everything we're learning here and apply it to so many things. So we've got to start somewhere. And this, in my opinion, is one of the best places to start. And guys, why not be super excited when you're working on stuff to see what the next color is going to be? Because when you're doing something like this, that helps like take away the monotony of just working back and forth. The simple stitch is when you get these long color changing yarns to be able to work with. And that's actually going to lead me to the giveaway tonight. All right, so pay attention here. I'm going to show you how you can win. All right, so I'm back over here to my face, and I've got to pull something up because this is going to be interactive. All right, so I am going to pull up the link to the We Crochet Chroma. All right, so I'm copying it. I'm putting the link in the chat. I've put the link in the chat right there. You see the link? All right, you guys see the link? You could also click the link in the lesson, all right, where it says yarn, you could click the link in the lesson. What I want you to do, I want you to click that link. I want you to go to that page, and I want you to tell me, what is your favorite chroma color? Come back here, put it in the live chat. Tell me what your favorite chroma color is. As you guys are doing that, I'm going to sit here and just chit chat with you a little bit. I'm going to randomly pick a person that has put down what their favorite chroma color is. This yarn is a lot of fun to work with. It's actually one of the first times I've worked with it. I've admired the colors for a long time. And you guys all know Caitlin. Caitlin works over at We Crochet now. And so I asked her about this yarn. I was like, what do you think about it? She's like, I love it. I love the colors. I'm like, great. I would love to use that for the BiCrafty Bootcamp. She said, fantastic. And so that is super exciting. On another note, you guys, I just got back my knit turkey trot pattern for this year's turkey trot. The crochet one isn't complete yet, but I am in love with it. And something was said in the Marley's Minions group, where there are now BiCrafty people who are just like, I don't know if I'm going to knit or crochet the turkey trot, which is exciting, isn't it? Because now those of you who maybe only knew how to knit or only knew how to crochet, now you're BiCrafty, like the whole world opens up to you. So you have so many choices, whether you're going to do the knit turkey trot or the crochet turkey trot this year. So that's something to start thinking about. On another note, you guys, on Monday, I have a brand new workshop getting released with Rob and Chichula, and it's all about crocheted socks. It's super exciting. If you have not already signed up to find out all of the details immediately, I encourage you to do so. There is a sign up page. That is something that we try and do because we don't want to bombard people with information that maybe they don't want to get. So we try and make sure that we have individual signups for items, which is why we have an individual sign up for BiCrafty Bootcamp. And we also have this individual sign up for the workshop. So let me get that sign up here while you guys are putting down your favorite colors. I'm loving it. I'm loving this. I'm loving the colors. And let me see if I can find it. I had it written down and then I don't know what I did with it. Are you going to have to give me a second? Look at you. I see the screen going crazy with all of the different colors. That is so great. Here we go. Just a second. It's going to be a second, guys. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. This has been a long one. I know it's been a long one. I apologize, but hey, at least you know you're getting your money's worth, right? There's a lot of information here. I'm going to get the link to the the crochet socks because it's really great. And I want you guys to make sure that you are a part of that. Robin and I have worked really hard on it, and I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of it and you know how it works. And I'm struggling right here with how to, let's see here. I want you to have that. Anyways, so we have the sock workshop coming up. And then speaking of BiCrafty, you guys, there is also the stash busting quickies is going to be coming out really soon. I also have a holiday pattern bundle that I am putting together with Robin Chichula. And then I have actually purchased designs from Michelle Wilcox and Megan Kreiner. So there's going to be some awesome amigurumi stuff in there for you guys. I'm very excited about this. That's going to be coming out around the first part of November. And then the Turkey Trot and Stash Busting Quickies are both going to come out at the same time, mid-November. And again, those of you who are BiCrafty are going to get the most out of Stash Busting Quickies because it has both knitting and crochet patterns in there. And so we just like to keep that very exciting and whatnot in there. All right, there it is. So I'm going to get the link. Where's the link? Give me the link. I need the link. I sound like a broken record, right? I need the link. Where's the link? Preview? Maybe? Exit preview? I hate this. I hate that I don't know what the link is. No clue. So I don't know how to give it to you. This is where it would be really handy to have Chrissy here. Well, you're just going to have to trust me with the crochet, classic and colorful crochet workshop. It's the sock workshop. I will try to find a link and get it to you guys right away. All right. So in the meantime, let me come over here. You guys are still writing down your favorite colors. I see a lot of different colors on here and I'm scrolling up. Wow. Look at all of this. These are great. You guys are awesome. All right. So this is for a chance to win the Chroma, or not the Chroma, I'm sorry, the We Crochet Beginner Crochet Kit. And the lucky winner is Alicia Alice. Alicia Alice, Dragon Lily was her answer. So Alicia, I am going to reply to you. Alicia, Alicia. I'm trying to talk to you, but it's not. All right, hold on. Let me try this. At ALI. There she is. Congratulations. What I need you to do, I need you to email me winner@marleybird.com, winner@marleybird.com. Make sure you let us know that you won the beginner crochet kit on tonight's lesson 5 of the YouTube channel. That's winner@marleybird.com. That's who you're going to email. Congratulations, Alicia. Is it Alicia? Alicia, maybe. Congratulations, and Dragon Lily. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, Dragon Lily is pretty darn pretty. I mean, all the colors are pretty. I'm using Pixie. I mean, gosh, you guys, do you see how pretty these colors are? They are amazing here. They are amazing. I love Lakefront. Let me see if I can make this bigger. I love Lakefront. I love Pegasus. I love Red Velvet. I love Drawing Room. Surfs Up. Cousteau is actually, that's fantastic. Galentine, Fathoms, Go-Go Boots. Oh my gosh, Go-Go Boots is so pretty. Sedona, Seahorse, Tiki, Wednesday. Oh, that's great. Wednesday. I mean, there are so many wonderful colors here of the Chroma, and you can check those out for sure. And just so you guys know, if you wanted to use Chroma, is it Chroma Twist? Yeah, Chroma Twist, CHROMA Twist. You could use that instead if you wanted to. Let's see. Let's look at the value pack here. Is that even going to come up? You don't want the value pack. I mean, you might want the value pack. There we go. Chroma Twist Worsted. Like, these colors are great. These are really good colors too. And they're a little bit more marled than just a straight through color. Very, very pretty. I'm pretty sure I'm working on something that's Go-Go Boots and Cousteau. I think those are the 2 colors I chose. But those are good colors. But then also the Chroma Twist Bulky, that comes in a hank, so you would need to wind that. But there's a lot of different marled shades in there too. So the sky's the limit. And guys, honestly, like, you can use just about any worsted weight yarn you want to use for this project. That's the beauty of this particular piece. And each idea of the granny shawl as a stepping point to try out other stitch patterns, other borders. Maybe you go ahead and you get Edie Eckman's book and you want to try out some different borders. Figure out the stitch count you need and go for it. Make something your own. Have fun with it. And if you do, you guys know what to do. Make sure you share with me on social media. Use hashtag Marley Bird, hashtag Marley Made Me Do It, or MMMDI, or hashtag BiCrafty Bootcamp. All right. So congratulations to Alicia. I hope you guys had a good time here. I know I've been on quite a long time. I hope it was worth it to you and you learned quite a bit. Stay on the lookout for our little edgings ebook. We will have that edging with the seed stitch in there, as well as some other ones in there, perfectly curated, perfectly geared and curated for the beginner. So that way you could take that those edgings and literally apply them to just about anything you're working on. And I cannot wait to see if you guys combine some of your edging skills now with some of your knitting. That'll be fun. I hope this works out for you guys. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to let me know what your favorite part of BiCrafty Bootcamp is so far in the comments of this video. So in the comments of this video, don't leave me hanging, y'all. Leave a comment down there and let me know what your favorite BiCrafty Bootcamp lesson is so far, or what skill you've learned so far. Just a quick reminder, I do not use WhatsApp. I will never ask you for your phone number or anything like that. So if it's me, I will find a way to contact you, but for more often than not, I'm not contacting people on YouTube. So don't, we've had some spammers lately who've tried to pretend they're me. Don't answer them. Don't call them. Don't do anything like that. It's not me. When in doubt, email me. You guys have my email, marley@marleybird.com, or Chrissy@marleybird.com, or some contact@marleybird.com. Email me. We'll answer you right away and let you know if it's us or not us. We try and get rid of all of that spam stuff whenever we can. All right, y'all. Congratulations for making it to lesson 5 of BiCrafty Bootcamp. I can't wait to see your bandana style triangle shawls with the shell stitch border. I think it'll be exciting. And good luck, everybody. All right, so that's it for me, y'all. Bye.